The economic order that the Tang created was a response in many ways to the decline in the economy that had taken place during the period of division. It had become a barter economy. The farmers were tied to great estates and monasteries. The country was more or less living barely above the poverty line, except for the well-to-do. And the government needed revenue. How to get it? Well, building on the traditions that had been developed during the previous dynasties in the north, the Tang adopted a tax system called the equitable field system, in Chinese the Juntianfa. What was this? In principle, this was a contract between the farmers and the government. The government said, we will guarantee you a certain amount of land, enough land to support your family, and pay revenue to us. One might think of the tax as a kind of rent on the land the government distributes to people. But the tax obligation belongs to the household. So the government will say, we will give you up, I think the amount of land they're giving is actually quite large for traditional farming, around 23 acres at maximum, but it really depended on how productive the land was. More productive land, you could give less. Less productive land, you give more. The land was given when they turned 18 years old. 18 years by Chinese count would be around 17 in the West today. And it was returned at death, or some say that half of the land was returned at age 60, retirement age, so to speak, and the rest at death. And what did the farmer have to do for that land? Well, he had an annual responsibility to deliver 3 bushels of grain, 20 feet of textile, and this would have been ideally silk, and 30 days of labor. Now, 20 feet of silk is a lot of silk. Could have been linen in some places. Cotton has not appeared yet. But as far as we understand, the way this would work, the people in the village would get together and produce the silk in single rolls and thus make up their allotment. Well, I've mentioned that there were great clans. How are they going to be treated? What we just find is that the government gives the great clans special allotments of land, large pieces of land. They give them this as part of their salary. That's when they're serving in office. They have land. But they also give large estates, maybe 1,500 acres, which would include, in fact, the farmers who are farming that land, to high officials. And that land can be inherited. It doesn't have to be given back. So whenever a family has a very high official, it's made it for generations to come. They give grants to religious institutions, which are tax exempt, just as the lands of the great clans are tax exempt. The government gets the wealth through its revenue through this tax system, but it redistributes the wealth as well. It redistributes it through land holdings, it redistributes it through other kinds of grants to officials and those leading the government. Another important part of the economic order was the successful linking of the southeast, this rich grain-growing, rice-growing region, with the capital in the northwest. And this was done by the Sui dynasty, in fact, which built a canal that extended from the southeast, from Yangzhou, all the way into the northwest. The Sui emperor is said to have, once the canal was completed, taken a tour of the south, and that tour required 65 miles of boats to go down. What was the Tang vision of empire ultimately? It was a vision that had great clans at its peak as the social, political, cultural, and economic elite, where the surplus wealth went to the government, where there was distribution from the top down. It was, in fact, if I think I had to summarize this, the Tang model, the Tang ideal, was a unified hierarchy from the top down of power, status, culture, and wealth.